Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and on this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney. Here we have a question from Pro Se Plaintiff who asked us, Mr. White, how much does the average employer side defense attorney bill to get a case through a motion to dismiss? What is it costing the other side to fight the average lawsuit? Just wondering. Okay. So, depends on the jurisdiction. Some jurisdictions in the U.S., you can file a motion to dismiss before you answer a lawsuit. That would change this math. I'm not assuming that's what's happening here. I'm assuming first the defendants file an answer, and then they file a pre-discovery motion to dismiss. Motions to dismiss generally deal with issues of law or issues in how the case was pled in the complaint. Just being very vague, very general here, right? Trying to give you an idea of what you're talking about. Now, you ask what the average cost would be. In the same way that there is no average claim valuation because every case is different, so too is the average defense attorney's bill always different. First and foremost, different firms are different and bill at different rates, right? If you're hiring a small local firm in the Midwest, or say like a budget option like Jackson Lewis, your bill will generally be much, much cheaper than it might have been if you went for one of the heavy hitters, as they call themselves. I know it's actually a plaintiff's firm, but I actually have heard a defense firm reference themselves as the heavy hitters. And I laughed then, and I will laugh now. But yeah, listen, there's firms that bill, $2,000, $2,500 an hour, I suspect. I've seen firms billing north of $1,600 an hour. I've also seen firms billing defense work at $800, $700 an hour recently, right? Used to be you could find it for $400 an hour, but I think inflation might have put the kibosh on that. So different firms are different. Different cases are different, right? If you're dealing with a pretty discrete motion to dismiss, let's say, with your namesake, pro se plaintiff, many pro se plaintiffs that is, who represent themselves, will fail to draft their complaint correctly. Could just be inadequate as a complaint, not capable of doing its job, not capable of supporting a lawsuit, and so that might be a very, very simple motion to dismiss, right? You perhaps could write that in 2 hours. Hey, the pro se plaintiff didn't do what they were supposed to do in the complaint, so we don't have a lawsuit, so please dismiss this, judge. That happens. They can probably do that in 2 hours. I mean, hypothetically, at that point, an answer and that motion is dismissed, you might, $10,000, maybe, right? And defense cost, easy. But let's assume our pro se plaintiff, did a great job, right? Or even that there's a plaintiff's attorney involved and that attorney did a good job and the complaint is sound and well drafted. At that point, that motion to dismiss is going to be more complex because it's probably dealing with questions of law, right? That's going to mean a lot more research, a lot more time on Westlaw or LexisNexis or whatever research software you prefer as a defense counsel. And realistically speaking, an answer and a pre-discovery motion to dismiss, I mean, you're dealing with, and I keep saying pre-discovery motion to dismiss because specifically I want to clarify to folks that we are not getting into discovery. We are not talking about the summary judgment motion here. These are all different amounts of work uninvolved in this conversation. We are purely for this purpose assuming that the defendants have answered. They have filed an answer. They've done some investigation internally once they brought in their outside counsel to defend them, and they've filed a motion to dismiss here. I would think, on average, a motion to dismiss would run, assuming that chain of events, assuming that labor was done, between $15,000 and $30,000 by the close of the motion to dismiss phase in a defense case. That would generally, and that variance is going to be largely up to the prices, but also, there's differences in complexity of the motion to dismiss, right? If it's one discrete point and you can brief it in 5 pages, it's going to cost a lot less than if there are 30 questions of law and no cases on point, and you're pulling cases out of the courts of the Donetsk district of Ukraine or something, right? Like you're like, well, listen, there's no there's no directly on point cases, but we have seen some courts internationally deal with this, right? Like, listen, that's a bad day if you got to make that argument, right? You got no case law to rely on. You're just saying, Judge, listen, other judges in other worlds, different countries, have done things, and I think you should do the same. Or I think you should do different. And here they are, right? Gets more complex, also less compelling, but more time gets spent on those. So where there's fewer cases on point, there's less in the way of statutory law or procedure on point, guidance from federal agencies or state agencies, the less you have to work with, often the more time you end up spending. Spend up more time as a defense attorney doing the research because you keep digging, because you keep hoping you're going to find something. And then the drafting is more involved because, let's face it, you're saying, please, judge, fine for me, but there's no one who says that you should so far. You'd be the first. So let's make some law, right? That's going to be a more involved drafting project for a defense counsel, generally speaking. Yeah, 15 to 30 grand to get a case through motion to dismiss on the defense side would be my expectation, assuming all the things that I said that I assumed in this video. I hope this helps. Pro se plaintiff, YouTube user pro se plaintiff. If it did, like, subscribe, comment down below. It helps me to help more people just like you. Remember, almost everybody works, but not everybody wins. Be smart out there.